helping software development leaders, software development executives build a culture of security in their software development teams. Okay, and we're going to go through a number of topics today. What I'm keen to do is to make sure that you leave with a really concrete set of steps that you can take to make sure that with the resources you have today, that you can improve, you can harden the security of your web applications that you have, and also the web servers or the network infrastructure that you're running. Okay, so we're going to go through 6 big topics or 6 main topics today. The sixth one is breaking news, which has just been released in the last couple of days around how hackers are using a very common tool that most software developers, or a lot of software developers use, how hackers are using that to infiltrate not only your public-facing systems, but also your internal systems as well. The reason application security is, or the reason you need to build a culture of security within your teams, is not because it's something that is a nice to have. It's something that is demanded by everyone. Okay. Now, there's a number of statistics that you would have seen being thrown around about security in general, right? With COVID-19, everyone knows that security attacks, hacking attacks have increased, right? But let's not forget that security issues were a topic of conversation. Security issues were important even before COVID-19. Okay, and the main reason is that most businesses, this is a survey by PricewaterhouseCoopers, PwC, most businesses do not want to do business with another company which has been hacked. Okay, it's a common human nature, right? If you think the person you're dealing with is untrustworthy, if you think that your information, your sensitive information, your IP is not safe for that other person, you will not want to deal with them, right? This is common human nature. This should not be news to any of us, but this is just a fact which has been brought out by a PwC study. Okay. Now, this is an interesting one as well. If you are the victim of a security attack, if you are hacked, it takes on average around 50 days to recover from it. And 50 days is not just 50 person days, it's 50 days multiplied by the number of people on your team. So just imagine the loss in productivity that you're suffering because you haven't taken the right actions up front, right? And security is also a bit like, remember the times when, we've sat an exam and we've said, oh, after the exam, look, if I just studied 1 or 2 hours more, I could have covered another couple of topics and I could have got better marks. Or when we've gone for interviews and we've said, oh, if I just done a bit more preparation, I could have improved my chances of getting the job, right? Security is a bit like that. And the stats prove this, because the stats say that 60% of breaches could have been prevented if development teams had simply applied the patches to their technology stack, which are already available. Right? It's one of those things where you don't want to be left in a lurch where you're thinking, if only I wish I'd done that. Right? That's why you need to build a culture of security so you can avoid these situations, so that security in your development teams becomes second nature. All right. Now, let me just pause there for a second. Let me show you, tell you a bit more about what we've done and why I'm talking to you about this. Okay. So we work with mid-size and large enterprise clients across the world. So across Australia, New Zealand, Asia Pacific, India, and also to the UK, right? And we work with big brands and we work with smaller up-and-coming brands as well, right? So everything that I'm going to tell you today, everything I'm going to show you today are things that we've helped our clients implement. So we know that you can implement it too, all right? There's nothing that I'm going to show you here today which is theoretical. It's everything. Everything is something you can do, uh, usually by yourself within your teams, to make sure that you improve the security resilience of your applications and also the security resilience of your network infrastructure. All right. Now, uh, one of the things that is very common across software development teams is that security is put into the too hard basket, or look, I don't have time to do this right now. I will concentrate on security later. I will concentrate on security next quarter or next financial year, right? I don't have the budget for this right now. And what we've found is when these when these uh, procrastinating factors come into play, then that's when things get really, really messy. Okay, we've been able to we've been able to look at an application and within 15 to 20 minutes inject a little bit of code into the login page and download entire databases. Right? With the most common one we find is that folder permissions are not set appropriately, so that we can pretty much inject any file into into those folders, and no one will know about it. All right. These things are, you read them and you think to yourself, well, this is easily prevented. Why would this happen? Right. But the fact is that it's the easiest things which are also the most forgotten things. All right. And if you don't have a culture of security, then it's the easiest things which get left behind. And it's the easiest things which allow hackers to penetrate your network, penetrate your application, and to wreak havoc. Okay. Now, one of the or there are a few reasons why security gets pushed to future, future sprints, or the next quarter, if you like, right? One of them is that we don't quite understand what we should be doing. There is a lot of misinformation about security. The information that is presented to us is not often structured in a way that helps us understand it. Okay, so part of this webinar today is about helping you make sure that you can actually wrap your head around some of the key topics in security and what you need to do about them and what you can do about them today, starting from today, with the teams that you have right now. Okay. The other thing is that everyone, when people think of application or software security, they think of pen testing. All right. I'm going to show you later that pen testing is just one part of application security. It's a key part, but it's only one part. And there are a number of things you should do and you can do in the meantime to make sure that you improve your security resilience. Okay. And this last point is important. Cybersecurity experts are in hot demand right now. We know because we employ them, right? They're in hot demand and they cost a lot of money, but it's not an excuse to do nothing about your security, right? I want to thank you for being here on this webinar, because you're taking the first step to make sure that you are improving or closing the knowledge gap that you have right now, and to make sure that you are doing all that you can within your existing constraints and within your existing teams. All right, so congratulations on that. And I want you to know that both the IT Map team, who are our partners, and also my Audacics team, we are here to help you on that journey. Okay. Now, while we're talking about the culture of security, I want you to think about why some airlines, I'm talking the Singapore Airlines of the world, I'm talking the JALs of the world, I'm talking the Lufthansas, the Qantases of the world. Why do some airlines have less crashes than some of the newer low-cost airlines? All right. There's a number of reasons for it, but one important reason is that the older airlines have been able to build a culture of safety within their teams, right? They've been able to make sure that everyone is doing the right thing before every flight, after every flight, during maintenance, while the aircraft are parked. Okay. Some of these corners are cut by the newer low-cost airlines to make sure that they can actually stay in the air, or make sure that they can stay afloat as companies. And because of this lack of a culture of security, we see that lower cost, newer airlines have more crashes than the older airlines, which have been steeped in the culture of safety all along. Your application development teams are exactly like that. Okay, you can't build culture in a day, right? But it's also true that the standard that you walk past is a standard that you accept. So you need to start building culture, not from tomorrow or next quarter or next year. You can start building culture from today, right? And through this webinar, I'm going to show you exactly how. Right? Let's first have a look at what you're up against. Okay. The vast majority of of hacking attacks these days come from this source here, phishing. For those who don't know, phishing is a way where hackers send you an email, usually an email that looks like it's from someone from a service or a company that you know. The email has a link in it. The email recipient clicks a link. They are taken to a site which looks like a site that they know, but they don't check the URL properly. They enter their details, and that's how hackers intercept people's usernames and passwords. That's the most common way of doing it. Okay, and when hackers do that, they are then able to gain access to your systems. They are then able to log in as someone else, exploit the security vulnerabilities within your application and within your network infrastructure, and inject all sorts of nasty things into your application, and access sensitive information from other users that you have, because you've not been able to close the vulnerabilities in your application. Okay, so I would like you to think of security not as something that you do to never get hacked, because that's not possible. We've all been hacked at one point or another, or we will be hacked if we haven't so far. I want you to think of security as a way to minimize the damage that is done when you are hacked. When you make that mindset shift, then all the other security activities that you should be doing will become a lot easier. And I would encourage you to make that mindset shift with the other people in your team. Right? It's going to be hard, but once you do it and you give them a process that they can follow, then they will be able to educate the newer members that join your team, and it'll become a cycle which just happens. All right. If you remember when daily stand-up meetings first became the norm, right? There was a bit of pushback. Not everyone was convinced that they were necessary. But now, because everyone does them, no one pushes back. They expect them to happen. All right. So think of security in that way. You take baby steps at the start, and then you build up, and you become a very well-oiled machine. Okay. One of the biggest misconceptions about application security is people saying, look, I have my servers are on AWS or Google Cloud or Microsoft Azure, and so I'm protected. Okay. Now, that is not completely wrong. That is true to some degree. What you're seeing here is Microsoft's cybersecurity reference architecture for their Azure platform. All right. There's a lot of security going on there, but it only protects you from certain things. It can only protect you from really denial of service attacks. It can't protect you from targeted hacks of your application or from targeted exploits of your infrastructure. It can't really protect you if hackers run a phishing campaign and steal the user credentials of some of your users and then get into your application, right? These big cloud service providers only really protect you from denial of service attacks. And the reason for that is quite simple. 93% of your security vulnerabilities come from custom code that is written by your developers. That's huge, right? But it makes sense. Human error is the biggest problem when it comes to creating, when it comes to security and safety, right? Even now, most security breaches that are reported in the Western world, one of the biggest factors cited for those is human error. Okay, and think of developers as creative people. They're writing code to accomplish a business process or accomplish another task, right? Creative people in general are not very good at following processes and conforming to security. Okay, so this is just another representation of the stat I just gave you. This iceberg is your code base, right? Most of your code base is made up of open source libraries or other libraries which are commonly available online. They have been vetted. They have been tested by a number of people for security holes, and they've been patched, right? This top part of the iceberg, which is above the water, represents your custom code. On average, it's around 21%. The 21% of an application comprises of custom code. But that's where most of the vulnerabilities come from, right? This 26.7 serious vulnerabilities represents 93% of the vulnerabilities that are found in applications, all right? So if you have developers or even outsourced development teams that write code for your applications, what I'm going to tell you today is very relevant to you. Okay. Now, this is a classic representation of how most companies do security, application security. They have a number of releases. They might have a sprint that lasts weekly, fortnightly, or monthly. They have a number of releases. And then once in a while, usually once every year or so, they do a pen test. Okay. What happens, and we know this for a fact, is that as soon as you go live with new code, hackers are watching and waiting to see what you've missed. What parts of your application or what parts of your network infrastructure have you not closed? And they wait for that. They scan for those errors, and that's when they attack. Okay. Now, this is not a great way to do application security, but at the very least, I hope you're doing this. If you're not even doing this, then please reach out to Chris and his team later, or me and my team later, and we can have a discussion about how to help you. All right. But if you're doing this, you have some problems, and I'll show you how you can fix it. Right. Before I do this, let me talk to you about what we're going to do for you after this call. After this webinar, we're going to send you this little handbook or guidebook that we've created. Now, this guide is something that you can pass around to your teams. It's a list of it's a checklist of things that your security controls that your application and your network infrastructure should have. Okay. Now, what you should be doing is when you are having team meetings around new features or enhancement to existing features, your developers, your team leads can be going through this checklist to make sure that your application includes at least these items. Okay, now this is just a simple checklist for authentication, right? For user authentication. So for your login pages, do your login pages disable autofill credentials? Are your passwords required to be long and complex? All right. So when you do that, when you go through this list, you can actually you can build in security from day one into your applications, and this further helps to improve your culture of security, right? If everyone's talking about security in each of your meetings, then it's a great way to ensure that security is top of mind. Okay, when it's top of mind, things get done. When it's on the agenda, security happens, and it becomes a lot more seamless. It becomes an easier process for you to manage. Okay, so the IT Map team will send you this after the call, and if you have any issues implementing it, reach out to us, and we can talk to you about, give you some ideas about what to do. Okay, I want to take you through the things that you can protect right now as we sit, and the things that are largely out of your control. This should give you a guide about things that are in part of your remit, and things that you will just have to accept when they happen. Okay, so these things on the left, you can absolutely protect this, right? You can lock down your database. You can configure your cloud servers properly. You can have your APIs tested to make sure that they don't allow any user access privilege escalations, right? You can make sure that any integrations that you have with external systems are appropriately secured, right? You can do source code validation of the external libraries that your team uses, all right? And obviously, this last one, designing security into your application, is really important. And the PDF guide that we send you after this will help your team accomplish this, right? But the way that your users use your application is out of your control. If they receive a phishing email and they happen to click on it and enter their enter their username and password, then that's really out of your control, right? If that happens, all you can do is make sure that your actual application and your network is locked down so that the attacker so that you minimize the damage that an attacker can do. All right. Now, the good thing is, if you protect all this properly, then you ensure that the users of your system don't become your Achilles heel. All right. If you see, the thing about security is, it's no point who was at fault. It's no point trying to work out who was at fault, right? Whoever was at fault, if you have a hack, then as a leader in your team, you're the one who's responsible. That's why we say, do all you can to protect the assets that are under your control so that you minimize the damage that is done here. Now, an important aspect of any spending decision, of any investment decision, is, what is my ROI going to be? Okay, so on the left, on the y-axis, we have the ROI, return on your investment, and obviously on the x-axis we have time and cost. Okay, the one thing that you absolutely should implement are firewalls, web application firewalls. Okay, these are really easy to do. The network admins within your team should be able to do this, and you should make sure that your firewalls are appropriately patched and appropriately configured, because that gives you a great first line of defense against hackers. All right. Now, the next thing you should be doing is vulnerability scanning. You should be doing vulnerability scanning before every release. And the reason you want to do that is you want to make sure that these windows for hackers to attack you are minimized or closed. If you do vulnerability scanning, you will close these attack windows. All right. Then, when your code base changes approximately 20%, you should do penetration testing. Penetration testing obviously takes a longer time. It can take up to 2 or 3 weeks, but it gives you a really insightful, in-depth view of the vulnerabilities within your application in particular. Okay, these things you can use to lock down your network environment, your servers, and your databases and whatnot. This pen testing you do primarily to understand how your actual application is, and what exploits can be done from within your application. Okay. Obviously, it costs more, but the feedback that you get from it is a lot more in depth as well. These things on the right, these are good things to do if you've done these things before them. Okay. If you have some sort of continuous monitoring solution in place, that's great, right? You should definitely be watching your logs to make sure that no traffic that shouldn't be there is there, right? One of the things with continuous monitoring is it can often throw up a lot of false positives, right? So make sure that the continuous monitoring solution that you have filters your alerts in a way which makes sense and actually filters out real unsolicited traffic, real unauthorized traffic from the traffic which actually should be there. Okay. Red team security testing. This is a higher version of pen testing, right? This is when our hackers, for example, they can conduct a coordinated attack on your servers and see how your team reacts in real time. Okay. Social engineering tests are things that we can do to test your network for against phishing attacks, for example. Are your email filters set up correctly to prevent to put all the social engineering emails into the spam folder rather than putting them into inboxes? Okay. Again, this protects you and your team internally, but you can't do this for each of your customers. Each of the users of your system cannot have a social engineering test run for them. That's why you need to protect your application, you need to fortify your application, and you need to configure your network properly to make sure that your entire package is as secure as possible, right? Our CyberChief platform is a vulnerability scanning solution, this thing here, right? And it's also a vulnerability management solution. So whenever you get pen tests done, all the issues, all the vulnerabilities are stored in this, are presented in our CyberChief platform, so that your developers can understand them, can fix them. More importantly, for leaders, for executives like yourself, what CyberChief does is it gives you a dashboard which helps you baseline your security performance. One of the key things about maximizing ROI is understanding where you were, finding out where you are right now. While CyberChief is a really good vulnerability scanner, and you can run that before and after each one of your releases to find security vulnerabilities, it also helps you as a leader make sure that your team is on the right track. Okay. I talked earlier about how traditional security works, right? So we know that typically no vulnerability scans are done. A company might do a pen test once every 6 months or 12 months. What this does is it creates a big gap for you where after a pen test, there are so many vulnerabilities that are found that your developers are literally overwhelmed. Okay. They have to spend a long time fixing those vulnerabilities, which means they can't get any new development done. They can't build new features, which means the next release is often delayed. Remember, I talked to you at the start about why people procrastinate about security? This is one of the reasons. One of the reasons people put off security is because they say, look, my developers just don't have time. And look, we're a SaaS company as well. We develop our own software like CyberChief, right? So we understand this. We understand that this is a problem. We've actually worked out a way to help you conduct your security activities, right, in a way that allows your developers to do small amounts of security work during every release, right? And that way, when you finally get a big pen test done, the actual security work that they have to do is very minimal, right? Because they've already built this history of baking in security into your application infrastructure. And what that will mean is that they spend less time on patching your network and your application, and therefore your new releases are delivered on time. So this CyberChief program includes both vulnerability scanning through the tool that we're going to give you access to, and it also includes pen testing, however often you need it, to make sure that you have all your bases covered. The Cyber Chief tool will allow your developers to be more self-sufficient. It's an on-demand tool. They can run a scan whenever they want. They'll have immediate results and how to fix the vulnerabilities that are found. And then, as part of your subscription-based process, we can do a pen test and make sure that everything is secure when a pen test is necessary. If you do sign up to this process, we will give you, after this process is complete, what we call a certificate of cloud security. This is a physical certificate which some of our clients hang on their walls. Some of our clients give to their other customers to prove that their applications is actually secure. When you build trust with your users in this manner, they're more likely to do business with you again and again. They're more likely to use the applications and the information that you give them. Obviously, the other big advantage is that the way that we've figured out to do application security, it happens fast, and it happens in a way that your developers can still continue doing their jobs. They can still continue building your applications and making sure that your new features are delivered on time. Now, this is the breaking news that I told you about earlier at the start of the webinar. This has just been released in the last few days, and it's a little bit technical, but work with me on this one. All right. So it's been found that hackers are now deploying web shells, even more than, say, a normal malware. They're deploying web shells within vulnerable systems to gain control of those systems and gain control of the other systems on the network. All right. Now, in your organization, you probably have some internal systems which are not accessible from the internet, and you probably have some public internet-facing systems. The reason this is important is because it's been found now that hackers can actually infect your public-facing systems and then use those to then access your internal systems. The reason this is important is because web shells, you might already know, are often used legitimately by your software development teams to remotely administer your machines. So it can be a little bit difficult to understand which web shells are legitimate and which web shells have been placed there by hackers or attackers. I mean, obviously, in our work previously, we've seen that this has been an issue sometimes, but it's been found by both the Australian Cybersecurity Agency and also the US Cybersecurity Agency that this is a big source of attacks over the last few months, especially during this COVID time. So the two important questions are: how do we find them, and how do we prevent them? So how do we find them? What you need to do is you need to compare your existing production environment with a previous production environment that you know to be secure. When you do that, you can find those web shells, you can find those files which look a bit suspicious, you can inspect them, you can understand what's going on. The other way is make sure that if you're not logging all traffic, you should be logging all traffic. Make sure that you look at your logs and see if there's any anomaly in the traffic patterns, right? If there are sustained increases in traffic when there really shouldn't be, then you know you might have a problem. There are other ways of, if you've got endpoint detection capabilities, then look at that and see what alerts that's giving you. All right. The best way, if you can't find anything by doing comparisons with previously good versions of your environment, then you really need to look at anomalies in your network traffic indicators. That's how you can find it, right? And the important question then is, how do we prevent them? Well, we prevent them by doing the things that we talked about earlier. We prevent them by making sure that we have our web application firewall set up properly. We prevent them by making sure that we're running vulnerability scans on our environment every time we go live. We prevent them by making sure that folder permissions are set properly, right? That we're doing pen testing if we have not been able to do pen test, if we've not done a pen test on our applications for a while. This network segregation is a very tough one. It takes a long time, and it's probably a lot more of an advanced technique. But if you can figure out a way to segregate or separate your public-facing network from your internal network, that's a suggestion. But in this day and age, I know of very few companies that will be able to do that in a way that both networks are completely separate. In our complex IT environments these days, most public-facing applications have some links back to internal applications. That's why you need to put all these other things in place to make sure that hackers are not stealing your data silently by deploying these web shells into your public-facing environments. You're on this webinar because you've realized that you probably need to do something about security. You may need to upgrade your knowledge. You may need to upgrade your activities, but you want to go on that journey to build a culture of security in your software development teams. And that's what we're here to help you do. We're here to help you become recognized within your company and within your profession for being one of those people who takes security seriously, does something about it, and then shows people what results they've achieved. If this is resonating with you, I encourage you, let's have a discussion about how we can help you achieve your goals to get you that recognition that you want.